Hello, everybody. Welcome to an interview here on the Midday Music and More Show. We have a very special guest with us today. We have Matt St. Amand. Okay, I'm going to try and remember how to pronounce the tough one first. The Chronicles of Mama Lujo.
That is correct.
Okay, there we go. He's got the Kilometer too, which I think is very fascinating. And he's an advocate for winter cycling, he was telling me. He just was on CBC about that, so we'll talk about that. But the Kilometer, all about over 76,000 kilometers that he has, rode around Windsor, Essex County because he's a cyclist, which is awesome. And Gas of Tank, he's here to talk about those three books. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, thank you.
Well, where should we begin? Would you like to talk about Gas of Tank first?
Absolutely.
Sure.
All three of these books take place in Essex County, and Gas of Tank came about. A neighbor of mine in LaSalle was an OPP constable, and I guessed correctly that he would have some good stories. So around the time that his retirement occurred is when COVID happened, and we kind of hunkered down, and I interviewed him, and he had more excellent stories than I could have hoped for, and we cobbled them together in Gas of Tank. He came up with the title. I can't believe at first I was a little bit, not against it, but it comes from a criminal. A criminal is named our book about cops. And that came about when my partner, Todd Turnovan, had many years ago pulled over some bikers, and one of the bikers was particularly unhappy with it. So upon leaving with his ticket, he gave an obscene hand gesture and pulled a wheelie on his way going away, which is considered stunt driving. So he was issued a summons or whatever brings you into the court. And his defense that he did not pull a wheelie, he had a very strong French accent, is that he had a full gas of tank. And it actually worked for him.
Yeah.
He was found not guilty.
I'm reading the below the title there, Canadian Law Enforcement Odyssey from 1979 to 2019, 40 years. That's got to be a lot of stories in there.
Yeah, an odyssey is what it was. When I was in high school, I worked at a video store. When Todd was just starting, had come out of high school and starting university, he worked at Windsor Jail. He was a guard when he was 18 years old. And when we started the interviews, I was a little curious exactly when the timeline would begin. I did not anticipate it starting so soon. And his stories about Windsor Jail were pretty amazing. We start with a jail brawl. We had actually a very heinous murder in 1976 in Windsor, the Moy Avenue murders, they were called. And not to go into detail about those, but the Windsor police apprehended the murderers. They were brought to court, they were found guilty and sent to prison. But they were also given an appeal 3 years later, and they came to Windsor Jail to be housed in order to attend court here. Well, when you have high-profile prisoners like that, they go to the segregation unit. These guys didn't want to go to the segregation unit and made their unhappiness known to the guards by fighting them. And so we begin the whole story with this unbelievable brawl, and just photocopying some things, scanning pictures and news articles that Todd had provided me over the years. I was quite amazed at just how sharp his memory was for the old details, because I would just kind of glance at them, just curious how the Windsor Star had characterized some of these things. So it was an odyssey to write, as well as for him to live.
Well, sharp mind. I'm sure some of the things you really can't forget, right? That's a dangerous job, correctional officer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he says they're the unsung heroes of law enforcement because they're not armed for obvious reasons. They're very much outnumbered. Mm-hmm. And the thing that impressed me most is that Todd at that time was a small guy, and so he had to really use his wits. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't really have the personality to muscle people, even if he was big, but that he had to outsmart people, figure out what their agenda was and what can I give to them so I can get what I want. Because information is the most important thing. You want to find out if someone's going to be attacked, or just what's going down in the prison. A lot of the guys have nothing but time on the range. That's what they call it in the jail. And so a lot of schemes are hatched, revenge is plotted, and violence imagined, I suppose.
This sounds like a great book. This is stuff right up my alley. I love anything, not to sound wicked and twisted, but, when it's especially local, you learn about these criminals and whatnot. So to hear it firsthand from somebody that is working around these people daily, That's pretty impressive. That's incredible.
Also, it doesn't entail, for instance, like gunfights in Vancouver or in Toronto. His policing career began in Merlin, Ontario.
Yep.
He was, at the detachment in Essex, in Malden. So they take place all around here. And they are just, it's one incredible story after another. And it was, at times, a bit of a challenge because these things were real to make them sound real, because I'm taking down the details and I'm going like, this is almost too good to be true from a storytelling point of view. But we managed to succeed. It's gotten an extremely good response.
I can imagine. Congratulations. Anything like that is so interesting, right? It keeps the mind going, right? You don't lose interest, which I love. So that's awesome. Gas a Tank. I might have to pick up a copy of that.
Yeah, for sure.
The other one here, this is great. The Kilometer. These are like, your cycling journeys. This is awesome. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it started with the onset of the pandemic. Like anyone else, I had to figure out some way to deal with this mentally as well as physically. Now, I'm a writer, and I'm used to, I can occupy my time pretty easily. But when we have huge swaths of time, as we did during the lockdown, even I found that a challenge. I was working on Gas of Tank at the time, which was helpful, but that's when I really got to find out how many hours there are in a day. So I took up cycling, and at first just began doing a little 10-kilometer circuit. And quite honestly, felt like that was just enormous to think that, after 5 days of riding, that's 50 kilometers. I was amazed.
Yeah.
And then with having time, it didn't matter if I made it, 15 kilometers. So I just slowly expanded my route. And so from May 2020 to this day, I'm just verging on 77,000 kilometers riding around Essex County.
Wow.
All the concession roads and every corner you can imagine I've probably been through on my bike.
Nice. Very, very nice. I mean, how long did this book take? What's the course of it? All throughout COVID 2020?
It does center on that, but I thought that in order to give people, to give the reader an idea of kind of what I was dealing with, I kind of went back in time a little bit as well, because at one time I was if I didn't hit 300 pounds, it wasn't for lack of trying. I was extraordinarily out of shape. I've always had, as a technical writer, it's a sedentary job. You're seated at a desk. I like to write in my own time, so that's sedentary. I like to watch movies, and I like to read. Mm-hmm. So these things are not high-calorie burning endeavors. So I got extraordinarily out of shape in my 30s and 40s. And so I kind of go through a bit of what that, trying to break out of it. I had made, so funny enough, 20 years ago, I'd made a small effort during a layoff riding my father-in-law's bike. And I, of course, did this after shoveling the snow. So it was the dead of winter is when I decided to take up cycling in 2005. And I rode from my house to the LaSalle Library for some unknown reason through the slush and snow. And once I got there, I realized I've now got to get myself home. And but it felt good in some strange way. That exertion felt great. And even though I had burned myself out that day, I went out the next day. When I had come into another technical writing job, I was all too happy to leave the self-improvement stuff behind and continue with my bad habits, terrible eating, and just lazing about.
Now, for your body and whatnot, had you tried running or walking previous in the years prior?
I had indeed. I used to jog outside. I remember vividly when I was in my early 20s, I had a bit of success with it, meaning I could keep it up for a while. But invariably, I get sore in my hips and my knees. And with jogging, there's really nothing you can do when you start getting that discomfort. The thing I like about cycling is if I start getting some soreness in my hips, I don't wear proper cycling shoes. I wear just running shoes. So I can change the position of my feet slightly on the pedals, and it makes a huge difference. I can raise the seat ever so slightly, and that'll hit some different areas. I can stand on the pedals. I can lean over the handlebars. And much as I don't like to, every once in a while, I can stop, and do that. But there's a lot of variety to keep going and alleviate the discomfort. And as a consequence, the reason I've been able to keep it up is I'm not sore.
Do you find your body recovers a lot faster compared to walking or jogging?
I think so. In the early days, when I started really bumping it up, I did it kind of quickly. So I'd do 50 kilometers, and then pretty soon I wanted to try out. Well, at first it was destinations. Then I'd see, well, how far was that? Then I'd realize, oh, that's an 80-kilometer ride. So then I'd ride the 80 kilometers and see if I can maybe expand that a bit. And so my recovery, I would wake up the next day thinking there's absolutely no way I'm even going to look at the bike today. But after I had 1 or 2 cups of coffee, I would start considering the idea. And after my 3rd cup of coffee, I would be waiting for the sun to come up so that I could get back out there.
Wow. How long would that take you daily? You were doing 10 kilometers daily?
That's right. That would be, 45 minutes or so, because I wasn't on a really super bike. And but now I have a carbon fiber road bike, and so in really optimum conditions. For instance, I rode the Ride to Survive in 2021, and I did a 200-kilometer ride, and I maintained 31.5 kilometers per hour for 6.5 hours.
Wow, good for you.
Which is a feat not to be repeated. But somehow that's what the app told me after I had gotten home.
That's amazing. So we're going to learn all about this in the Kilometer and other things as well, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not a how-to book. I really don't have any advice. I learn everything very slowly, and I learn everything the hard way. The few things that I know is you want to probably clean your chain once in a while, and inflating your tires. Keeping your tires inflated is a great thing to do. Wear your helmet.
Hopefully it'll be time to do that very soon, but I don't know about with this snowstorm coming in.
No, it's been really holding me up. I'm riding. I have a trainer for indoor riding, and I find it very hard getting on it. It's very hard to motivate myself because it's the feeling of having my tires on the road and actually kind of navigating a route that I really enjoy, even when the wind is up. And I don't mind going out in the cold, but it has to be above freezing at a minimum, because you can run into trouble really quickly if you go out and it's too cold.
But you're an advocate too for winter cycling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But with like lots of parameters, you want dry conditions. You want to make sure there's no chances of slipping, because if I see anything that looks wet, I just naturally assume that it's ice, because you don't want to find out the hard way. I've had a few tumbles on the bike, and it is vastly different falling off a bike when you're an adult than when you were a kid. I don't remember it being fun when I was a kid, but I've had maybe 3 or 4, possibly 5 falls in the last 4.5 years. And oh my God, I haven't broken any bones. I go with it. And the thing that's most sore is my ego for some crazy reason. I'm worried, did anybody see that? It's like, dude. But I haven't even broken my glasses or my phone, which is incredible. Because a couple of them I was going reasonably fast and just not paying attention. So I have a quick lessons learned meeting in my mind, and don't repeat that.
Well, stay safe when you're out there. This sounds like a great book too. You got something brand new out as well. I'm going to let you take it from here.
I do. The latest book is called The Chronicles of Mamelujo. And the idea came to me. It's a work of fiction, but it was born of real life. I was a technical writer in a machine shop, and this is after years of being in IT, in insurance, in places where I had some semblance of an idea what's going on. I don't have any mechanical aptitude, so being in a machine shop, it was extraordinary, a big learning curve. And luckily, I worked with a lot of gracious people who were a lot better at explaining things, or a lot more patient, I should say, than I would have thought. So anyway, I was there, and I started thinking, I just got in my mind that, who the first technical writers must have been. And I started thinking the cave painters, the cave artists. And because sure, they would chronicle history and things like that, but if there was a particularly good method for hunting that had come up, surely it would have to be captured, because the whole idea is to maintain the tribe. And I just started coming up with this idea of a guy, because as a technical writer, I've experienced a number of layoffs. For some reason, the documentation or the technical publications department's the first to get hit. And I wondered, 9,000 years ago, it must have been so idyllic. But I started thinking about it. And so Mamelujo, he's in a tribe, and it's possible for them to have a bad chief. We tend to idealize ancient people and think, oh, it must have been just so harmonious. And it's like, no, people are people. So he has a chief, and he does most of his work on what's called the teaching rock, and like only sacred things. And only when he's moved by the gods does he put something on there. But one day the chief says, no, I want you to put a tribute to me on there, which kind of goes against what it's all about. So under the medicine man's advice, which isn't great, Mamalujo does a work of satire, mocking satire that embarrasses the chief. And the chief's like, okay, that's really good. And he banishes him. So Mamalujo, who doesn't know how to hunt, who's got 12 toes, he's an insomniac, he's afraid of the dark, is sent out to fend for himself. And in an era where there was no unemployment insurance.
Oh, man.
So he does. And anyway, I just sort of felt my way through it, and I just found it highly interesting doing a bit of research about what life would have been like back then. And it seemed the Anishinaabe people were about the only culture that had their act together back then. So I that's the group that he is a part of, and the language.
Matt, I got to tell you, all 3 books are different, but each of them sound great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Where is the best place to get a copy of one of these, or perhaps all 3?
They're available at River Bookshop here in Amherstburg, at Juniper Books in Windsor, and Storytellers on Ottawa Street as well, Kitty Corner to Freed's.
Oh, that is fantastic. Once again, Gas of Tank, The Kilometer, and The Chronicles of Mamalujo. They all sound amazing. Matt, this has been so much fun and a huge learning curve for me here. I feel like I've been educated and whatnot. I love it. I love when I come away from an interview feeling like that. So thank you so much for coming in, talking, all about your 3 prized possessions right there. You must be so proud. Those are awesome. And learning a bit about you as well.
Great. I appreciate you having me in.
Thank you very much. Matt St. Amand, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that interview here on CKBG The Berg. I've been your host, Spencer Duby.